Hi everybody! After so many requests over so many years, I am finally reviewing an overbust corset by Charmian, which can be found on Amazon. So here's the front, the side, the back, and the other side. Starting with the length and the fit of this corset, I purchased the size small, which when I looked on the sizing chart on the website, this corresponded to a waistline of 24 inches and a full bust of 32.7 inches. When I measured this straight out of the package before it was ever worn, the waist was 25 inches, so it's actually 1 inch larger than spec, and the full bust measured 33 inches. So the bust is actually pretty close to spec. However, the bust line here, one side is 16 3/4 inches and this side is 16 1/4 inches. So if you can notice that the bust is skewing a little bit, it's a little bit slanted, it's because the corset was sewn asymmetric at the top edge here. Now, moving on to the other springs, I'm going to base the springs off of the 25-inch waist as opposed to the 24-inch waist because the waistline was not simply stretched out over time. The corset itself was sewn a little bit large. So the full bust has an 8-inch bust spring. At the underbust here, I measured it to be closer to 26 inches, which is why I'm unable to lace this closed in the back, despite the fact that this corset is only 3 inches difference from my natural waistline. But you can see I'm getting a lot of upward squish, a bit of a spillover and muffin top around the sides and the back here, not only because this corset is very long, but also because it's too small for me around the top edge here. The waistline pretty much runs from here to about here, and this is pretty much like 25 inches going through. At the high hip, which is right at my iliac crest here, measures 29 inches, so this corresponds to a 4-inch high hip spring. And then at the low hip, right here, where it goes straight across horizontal all the way around, this is 33 inches, so again, an 8-inch low hip spring. In terms of the length measurements, this center front here is 18 inches, and when you look on the size chart, it does say that this has a length of 18 inches, so that is to spec. At the princess seam here, from the apex of the bust down to the lap here, this is 17 1/4 inches. However, the distribution does not really work for my body. I have a long waist and also a low waist. So the length distribution of this corset is 8 inches from the waist up, whereas I would prefer closer to 10 inches. And this corset is 9 1/4 inches from the waist down, where I prefer closer to maybe 5 inches. So I find that this corset, it doesn't cover me quite as much as I would prefer up top, and also I find it difficult to sit down. And this is not the type of corset where I can simply pull everything upwards because, like I said, I'm being limited by the breadth of my rib cage going around. The waist tape of the corset I feel to be about here. My natural waistline is closer to right here, so that is about a 2 to 3 inch difference. And if I were to pull everything upwards even more so that I got the distribution that I would like, the waist tape would literally be right underneath my bust, like an empire waistline, and that is not doing anything for my waist. When I actually measured the corset plus the width of the lacing gap I have in the back, it is pretty much matching my natural waist measurement. I'm not getting hardly any reduction at all. There's support, but there's no reduction. Like you can see, I can even pull my waistline away from the front edge of the corset there. But moving on, for people who want the rest of the measurements, the side seam here is 15 inches and the center back is 18 inches once more. So this corset is made for somebody with a long waist, but a rather high waistline and a very deep pelvis, but also a pelvis that is not necessarily very wide. So let's go to the tabletop portion of this review and I can show you the other details close up. All right, and here is the Charmian Amazon corset laid flat, and I hope people don't mind that I changed out the layout of my tabletop portion of this review, because I recently changed my desk setup, so my computer is a lot more difficult to move now that it's kind of on a stage. So anyways, so moving on. For the materials, it's 2 main layers, and for the first time in years I actually opened it up to see the materials inside. So the fashion fabric is a single layer of polyester twill, not cotton, and the lining is also a single layer of poly twill. This is what the label looks like, Charmian Irresistible Fashion. Here is the contents and the cleaning instructions, made in China, and the size. As well, this tag was on the Busk, which I cut off so that I could actually wear it. And here's the style information as well. And for the construction, there are 6 panels to this. 1, 2, 3 make the front, 4, 5, 6 make the back. You can see that there's a little bit of a swell right here on panel 3 pretty much exclusively, and on the top here, panels 1 and 2 give you the swell of the bust line there. And as far as the construction of it, this corset was assembled using the welt seam method, and I promise that I will make a video focusing specifically on the different construction methods so that I can make these reviews a little bit more brief. But it was assembled using the welt seam method, and it's double boned on the seams here. How the boning channels were laid down, you have these fuzzy little boning channels that were sewn onto the fashion fabric. And it's fine that it's affixed to the fashion fabric because the fashion fabric is this heavy cotton twill anyways. Now, the lining is actually floating. So you see these boning channels here, they're all aesthetic. They don't have any bones in them whatsoever. So they really added extra labor for no reason, unless they were specifically going for a stylistic, like aesthetic choice to make it look like it has boning channels on the inside, even though having a smooth floating lining is considered like a little bit more like higher end. A lot of higher quality corsets tend not to show the boning channels on the inside, not these like clean guts, so to speak, but it's actually a premium to have a floating lining that's like totally smooth on the inside, where it's smooth against the skin and you don't have all these bumps going against the skin. So this might point to, you know, this is kind of like application without fully understanding the construction of a corset, or maybe they just thought that this is what people wanted to see on the inside, but it really is like an extra like 15 minutes at least of people sewing these seams for not really any particular reason, and it's not improving the construction of it really. All they really needed to do was put together the floating lining and then put the lining with the raw seam allowances towards like the inside of the corset where you won't see it. But if this was a deliberate choice in terms of the aesthetic that they wanted, that is their prerogative. You may also see the waist tape here. It is a partial waist tape running from panel 2 to panel 5 here. And it is a 1-inch wide black cotton twill. But like I said earlier, my waistline is actually closer to right here, 2, maybe 3 inches lower than the waist tape actually is. There are a lot of people who have a visually smallest waist that is much higher than their skeletal waistline. So perhaps they had measured a couple of people and decided that this is where the visually smallest waist is. But the corseted waistline, the skeletal waistline, should be down here for most people, unless somebody is particularly high-waisted with a very deep pelvis and very short rib cage. But this is another case where I think that they are trying to apply all the right things in terms of making a good corset. You know, they looked online and they're just like, okay, a good corset needs to have a waist tape. But they kind of put it on without really knowing why the waist tape exists, what it's used for. It's supposed to be placed at the point of the highest tension, and the highest tension is supposed to be at the skeletal waistline. And so I think this is another case of application without proper knowledge. You know, when you go down the checklist of all the right things that a corset should have, yes, this ticks a lot of the boxes, but it really seems like somebody took a list of, you know, what does the discerning corset wearer want in a quality corset, and, you know, somebody's following a recipe with their eyes closed, without ever having worn or experienced or possibly seen another genuine corset in person before. So I won't go as far to say that this is a mockery of a corset. It is absolutely a genuine corset. It's just a little wonky, that's all. The Modesty panel in this corset is 4.5 inches long, and it's a single layer of this black cotton twill here. It is affixed to one side of the corset, and unfortunately it cannot be removed with a seam ripper because this boning channel is, or this, okay, apparently this one boning channel actually does have a bone in it, but none of the ones like on the sides of the seam here have bones in it, but this one does. So if you wanted to remove this Modesty panel, you would either have to take scissors and just cut it out, or you'd have to take your seam ripper and remove this boning channel and take this out as well. But yes, this is 4.5 inches wide, which will cover a lacing gap of about 2 to 3 inches wide comfortably. This corset is not designed for tight lacing or waist training. It's designed to give people a very gentle reduction. So don't go buying a corset that's like 6 inches smaller than your natural waistline. I would probably recommend maybe 2 to 3 inches smaller. And that is if the bust and hip springs are able to accommodate your measurements as well. Additionally, there is a small Modesty placket extending out from the knob side of the busk here. So this is about 3/4 of an inch wide, and again a single layer finished with this serged edge here, and finished in black cotton twill. And the binding is made from matching strips of black cotton twill, and it is sewn in a single pass, so there's a little bit of a top stitch both on the top side and on the underside. And when I was opening up the binding, the seam ripper just removed the binding you know, 1 stitch, so that was easy enough. Very standard binding, no problems with it, and there are no garter tabs in this corset. The busk is very long. It is 17 inches long, and it has 8 loops and pins, equidistantly spaced. It is a standard flexible busk, so it's 1/2 inch wide on each side, and because of the flexibility of the bone as well as the length of the busk, it is very bendy. So I found it a little bit frustrating to get all the loops and pins clasped together when I was putting this corset on. So just be aware of that, and I will also link another video up in the cards and down in the description below for how to get on a frustrating busk if you're having a little bit of trouble. And this corset has a total of 24 bones, not including the busk. If the description says 26 bones, they may be including the busk in the front as well as 2 bones as well. But it is double boned on the seams, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 on each side, so 20 for both sides. And when I opened up the corset, you can see that there are indeed 1/4 inch wide spirals here, quite shiny. So it is genuine steel boned. And of course, it does attract my magnet here. And additionally, in the back here are 2 flat steel bones, 1/4 inch wide, sandwiching the grommets on each side. So that makes 4 of those total. And you can see there's the white flat steel here. It does attract my magnet as well. There are a total of 32 grommets in the back of this corset, 16 on each side. They are size 00 with a small flange around them and finished in silver. Again, this is not a tight lacing corset, so you might not see much wear. You know, there's a little bit of like abrasion in the twill there from, you know, I've used this corset obviously, but they're not coming away. But like I said, I'm getting almost no reduction from this corset at the waistline here, so I did not expect very much wear and tear or pulling out. And the underside of the grommet, so they do have washers present, a couple of splits here and there, but the laces are abrasion resistant. And again, not a whole lot of wear and tear, but this corset again is not for tight lacing. And the laces are your standard workhorse shoelace. So it's a 1/4 inch wide, black nylon lacing. They are a little bit springy, but very, very difficult to snap or break. They are long enough for my uses. Again, this is not for tight lacing, so you're not going to be having like a huge lacing gap in the back. And they actually don't have bunny ears. It's 2 separate laces. No big deal. I have done this in the past as well. So if you need a little bit more lacing, then you can technically just unthread the ones at the waistline and then rethread it as you are tightening up. And it's laced in chevron style going towards the waistline here. The Charmian Long Wang Overbust cost $48 US. And this concludes my review of the Charmian Overbust from Amazon. So I hope you found this educational, you learned something new. If you did, please remember to click that like button. And if you have any comments or questions about this corset, feel free to leave them in the comment section below and I'd be happy to answer you. If you own this corset or if you have a different corset from Amazon, you are welcome to give me your thoughts in a comment down below. And let us know what you think of it, because of course I am one person. I could have gotten extremely unlucky, but I doubt it. But anyways, before this video gets much longer, I will wrap it up here. Thank you for watching to the very end, and I will see you all next week for another video.